Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to Bible Story Corner. Today, we're going to tell a story from the Old Testament from the book of Jonah. So when you have your Bible in front of you, it's almost about, it's a little more than halfway through your Bible. So we have the book of Psalms is about halfway, and then we have some major prophets, and Jonah is one of the minor prophets. So it's going to be a little bit easy to miss because it's only 4 chapters long. But if you'd like to get your Bible and find Jonah, we're going to talk about the first 3 chapters in the book of Jonah, and then I'll let you read the 4th chapter with your family and talk about it. All right, let's get started. Jonah heard God tell him to go to the city of Nineveh. God wanted him to tell the people to love and obey me. But Jonah didn't want to go to the city of Nineveh. He really didn't like the people of Nineveh because they were enemies of the people in Israel. So Jonah decided to disobey God, and Jonah got onto a boat instead. Now, this was not just any boat, but this was a boat that was heading the opposite direction towards a place called Tarshish, and it was headed away from Nineveh. He thought he was being pretty tricky taking a boat going the opposite way. But do you think that God knew what he was doing? Oh, yes, indeed. God knew all along where Jonah was and what he was doing. Well, Jonah had gone below to take a nap. And while he was asleep, God caused a big storm on the sea. The wind blew, and the water rose and rose and rose. The sailors became terrified that their small boat would break apart. The captain went down below and woke Jonah, and he said, "What are you doing sleeping at a time like this? Get up and pray that we won't die in this storm." The captain and the sailors thought that probably Jonah may have something to do with the reason for the terrible storm. And they asked Jonah who he was and why were they caught in this storm. And when the sailors learned that Jonah, who he was a prophet of God, and that he was trying to run away from God, they said, "How could you do a thing like that?" They must have known that everyone should obey God. And Jonah said, "I know that the storm is my fault." And so he told the sailors, "Pick me up and throw me into the sea." Well, they didn't want to do that, but Jonah said, "If you do, the storm will stop." And they were sure that he would die if they threw him into the sea, but they felt they had no choice. And so they picked him up and they threw him into the sea. And as soon as they did, the storm stopped. And they thought for sure that Jonah had died. Down and down and down into the sea he went. But, lucky for Jonah, God did not forget about him. He provided a big fish that came along and swallowed Jonah in one big swallow. Now, while Jonah was there in the belly of that fish for 3 days and 3 nights, guess what Jonah did? You're right. He prayed to God. He thanked God for saving him, and he promised God that he would obey. Well, after 3 days and 3 nights, God made the fish cough Jonah up onto a beach. And again, God said, "Go to Nineveh and tell the people they must love and obey me." Can you guess what Jonah did this time? Let's see. If you think that Jonah decided to go to Nineveh and tell the people the message that God had for them, you would be right. Finally, after a time, Jonah came upon the city of Nineveh. And he went into the city. And there he told the people everything God wanted them to hear. And the people listened to Jonah, and they were sorry for not obeying God. They asked God to forgive them. God saved Jonah because God loved Jonah even when he disobeyed. Jonah learned to obey God, and God was glad. We can learn to obey too. Obeying shows that we love God. Great. Let's talk about our story. First, what did God ask Jonah to do? God asked Jonah to go to the city of Nineveh and tell the people to love and obey him. But what did Jonah do? Jonah took a boat and went the other way, didn't he? Why would he do such a thing? This one is a harder question, but I think you know. It's because Jonah did not like the people of Nineveh, and he didn't think that it would do any good anyway. They were enemies of Israel. But what happened next, you remember? He got into a boat and he went the opposite way. And when he did, something happened. A big storm happened. And it was scary. It was so scary that even sailors were very afraid. And then the sailors asked Jonah, why is this happening? Do you know anything about it? And what did Jonah tell them? Jonah told them that he did know. It was because he was disobedient. And he told the sailors to do something. Do you remember? He told them to throw him into the sea. Can you imagine? Did the sailors want to do that? No, but they knew they were going to have to do it if they were to be saved. And that's what they did. Then God made a provision for Jonah after he was thrown into the sea. What was it? It was a big fish. Right. A big fish that swallowed him. For 3 days and for 3 nights, he was in the belly of that fish. And do you remember what Jonah did when he was in the belly of the fish? This one could be a little harder. He prayed and he told God that he will do as God told him to do. To tell the people of Nineveh they must love and obey God. And that's exactly what he did. Once that fish let go of Jonah, it says he coughed him up on the beach. Jonah went directly to, do you remember? The city of Nineveh. Now, Jonah did tell the people what God said, but here's a surprising part. What did the people do? That's right. They repented. That means they turned the other way. They turned away from their sins, and they asked God to forgive them. Did God forgive them? He did, because that is exactly what he wanted. And the people said that they would now love and obey God. Boys and girls, thank you for sharing this story with me. I think today we'll sing a song that we've sung before. This seems like a good day to sing Trust and Obey. Now I'd like you to know that that song has more than one verse. We're only going to sing one verse together. But with your family, you can look it up and find more verses, and so that you can sing those together if you'd like. If you're ready, here we go. When we walk with the Lord in the light of His word, what a glory He sheds on our way. While we do His good will, He abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. We'll see you again next week, boys and girls.